Wow. That's scoring on a massive scale. Thanks so much, Dave. This is, obviously you put a huge amount of effort into this entry. It, really seems like my dotted brev and longa level entrance, just, similar to my brev level entrance, just really, went to the wall for this and have really just did a huge effort to make these scores as as good as they possibly could. So, just to warn you that when I first got your score, there were some problems with the mix. Just to bring this up for a second, the the trumpet was like boosted really really high, and the horns were like dragged way low. Then most of the single line percussion was dragged way down to where I couldn't hear it, and harp and celesta were really 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 low. And I think maybe there were some parts of this score where you wanted some of these instruments to mix a little bit better. But I would suggest, point out to you that if you are getting things that are out of balance and you're fixing it in the mix, maybe what you need to fix is the dynamics in the score rather than to boost things, like to move things up and down. Because I know you want to get more realistic, like a more realistic representation of how loud the instruments would play, or what their projection would be. But all the same, some of the choices that you made in terms of dynamics are, they really will actually, they really will stick out more than you think that they are, right? They can't really be corrected unless you were actually mixing them with a mixing board. Okay, but I will cover those issues as we get to them. So let's just look at the scoring, and I'll talk about the different things as they come up. All right. Okay, so piccolo doubling alto flute doubling piccolo. Yeah. So here, you're giving them just a couple bars to change over to piccolo. So that's pretty, it's doable, but you are opting for faster tempos here, right? So, hang on, yeah, exactly. So maybe like the answer here is for, like for the alto flute to finish a little earlier here, or maybe this could be given to the regular flutes. It says 1 here, so I'm wondering whether or not this was originally intended as a flute line. And it is sort of in a kind of a, I know what you're trying to do here, celesta plus alto flute, that's just really really gorgeous. But maybe you could go alto flute, da 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 da, and then regular flutes, right? As it's like becomes less of a beautiful, unique texture right in here, and then you would give your alto flute player a little bit more time to trade over to piccolo. Okay. Yeah. So it's really like, it seems like it's a bigger score, and you do use like bigger textures, but it's, some of this is just because, like, for instance, there are extra staves here in the that are like not being used because of we could actually get rid of some of these right now, just kind of hide them, right? So that makes it a little bit more readable. That's something that I could have done when I reformatted this score for you, but it still is big scoring. You still are using a lot. You're using bigger textures even when you're scoring softly. All right, so here I feel you could have just had piano cantabile. You don't need to have mezzo piano. As I've mentioned in other evaluations, mezzo dynamics don't necessarily, they have a kind of an uncommitted feeling to them in terms of the color of the instrument, right? There's kind of a grayish quality, I feel, with mezzo solos, right? I mean, it doesn't matter you shouldn't avoid any kind of mezzo scoring anywhere, but I'm just saying in terms of like a solo where you really are highlighting the quality of the instrument, especially in a very intimate way like this, it's just write piano and have nuances, right? Have piano crescendo, right? Da. Okay, and I really love the little flurries and the little decorations, the rustling sound behind the music. And it's interesting that you've got this little a little bit of contrary motion right in here. It gives the music, when we add these things to Lili's score, it kind of gives the music a more calculated and less facile kind of feeling. Now, by facile, I don't mean stupid or simple. I mean just like, in the sense of facility, right? In the sense of just like, being awestruck and wonderstruck. Because I feel that's really kind of the vibe of this, of this piece, is that it's just, it is Lili, like, just almost being completely reacting with her emotions rather than with her intellect to some moment of joy, right? That doesn't mean that the piece is written in anything less than a genius way, right? But she is, whether by craft or by inspiration, she is expressing something that is just spontaneous, right? So I feel that we lose some of the spontaneity when we add counterpoint or like leading tones or, like under kind of nebulous like dominance and so on. So like just saying watch out. I'm not saying that it's good or bad, and I think that it's great. I actually think that it's great that you added it because it's an element that I haven't heard in other evaluations so far, that kind of motion at this point. However, just thinking about the overall effect of the music. Okay, here I would say just totally unnecessary to tell the string player what bowing to use. You know what I mean? They know. Leave it up to the concert master and the section heads. They will work out. Usually, what happens is the concert master will bow out her part or his part, and then they will also show in other parts where they need an up bow or a down bow or whatever, and then the leaders of those sections will bow out the rest of it, right? Okay, so in essence, like it's something as simple as this, right? But what makes me wonder is, like, why are you saying up bow here, and then you've got a tenuto on the downbeat, right? See, that doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, I just think that, like, what you really mean here is this, right? Up, down, up, down, up, down. So you can really land on this tenuto, right? A tenuto bow is like zoom. It's like the word zoom, right? It's just like it. The bow is using its full length, right? And so it is a note that has emphasis, right? So, and then coming off of it, right? But like in essence, like right here, you're asking somebody to up bow into a diminuendo, which is also kind of an unnatural thing, right? So I would say it would be better to break these all up that way, right? Just, up, down, up, down, up, down. Right? And then, don't even bother, don't bother telling the player what bow. They'll know. They'll figure it out. It's unnecessary. Just don't add anything not necessary to a score. But what is necessary is you really do have to slur this kind of fingered tremolo, okay? Here this could just be a trill, right? That could just be a trill on E. Although, wait, no, these are, excuse me, pardon my very poor eyesight. Those are intended to be 16th note tremolos, fingered tremolos. So, okay, so as you can see, with my horribly poor eyesight, I could easily make that mistake, and so could other players as well. So what I would recommend is notating out the first beat, right? That really shows 16th notes fluttering back and forth between the pitches of C sharp and F sharp, and then going to the shorthand for that on the next two beats, and then just continuing on in that style. But use a trill here, okay? It's just easier to think about. Or actually, don't use a trill. Excuse me, I'm forgetting what I was just talking about. Yeah, so just use this notation. It's fine. All right, but definitely do slur it, okay? Because otherwise, you're suggesting that the player go da 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 with separate bows, right? And that I would really want to notate out, at least for the first bar, showing that it was really intentional that you had left the slur out. Okay. So far, yeah, and like this little twitch right here at the end, and yeah, just, in little bits of motion. It's all really nice. It's all very enchanting, okay? I think that these little glissandi are, since they really are glissandi, they could just be notated as such, just with a little pedal marks, right? Because, whenever you write out like 7 notes or 8 notes in a row like this, then it's almost as if you're telling the harpist to like actually finger each note separately, right? Like really rest their fingers on the strings and go, just like, and some people will, some harpists will actually do that. Like when they see that, like I think it's an older thing, but it's like just really playing all the notes because they're assuming that you really want them separately played. And they might actually do that where they feel like, right here, they might feel that these notes are too slow to glissando, right? So if they feel it's too slow to glissando, then they'll actually pluck each note right in order. But most of these are totally fast enough to use the glissando technique, and I would say especially at this speed, like quarter note equals 140. So yeah, so you might want to renotate something, that. I mean, this is such big scoring. There are going to be lots and lots of little things to pick out and to tweak and to fix, but that doesn't mean that I would say, any less in a score like this that you should, whether you should or shouldn't try to get this performed either. I do think. I mean, wouldn't it be great if there were all these Lili Boulanger arrangements of this piece out there in the world that different orchestras were reading or programming even, right? So, I mean, I think you should look into it, maybe, see if that's possible. So then alto flute plus cor anglais. So, like, right here, I would say, like, the cor anglais is going to just wail on that alto flute. It's like, you're really not going to hear the alto flute very much at all in this combination, okay? But this is cool. Like, alto flute is really better, when it's not necessarily doubling other instruments. Like right here, you're using it to thicken the viola part, and the same thing here. So in the best of circumstances, you'll get a slightly cooler color to the viola. But you could get that with like another clarinet player too, right? So like, what is there about the alto flute scoring right here so far that is really all that unique or useful, or that will really contribute very much, right? So you just have to consider that. In the scoring of Rimsky-Korsakov, and to some degree Ravel in Daphnis and Chloe, you'll see alto flute used in this way to sort of as a textural element, and as a kind of just like a standard lower flute and stuff. But that doesn't take into account the weakness of the delicacy of the instrument, right? Now, see, right in here, I think this is terrific alto flute scoring right in here. That's really, really nicely done, right? And it's kind of strange color will add a lot to the celesta here. Of course, it is, it is going to be sounding in the middle right in here, right? It's going to be this line right here in the celesta will be at pitch with the alto flute, right? So it's playing from within the celesta pitches here rather than on top of them. Okay, so it will balance, but still, the alto flute player will have to play out a bit, right, for the combination to be ideal. There's just so much to say about this score, I mean, there's no way that I'm going to be able to really give you all the coaching that you would need, and it's just because of the monumental scope of your scoring here, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that really work great, like the bass clarinet plus the cello here. That's all fantastic, but just like the cumulative effect here, and just such nice little things, tubular bells, triangle, a little bass drum roll right in here. That's really nice. Okay, and then, bump, 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 bum, that is harp plus horns, and here you're trying to balance it with forte. I would say piano, like piano, horns, forte, harp is how that's going to balance. Okay, so or the conductor can just balance it in rehearsal, and you can leave it alone. And then dun 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 dun, and just like a little tremolo strings and coming in on the resolution, the oboes, and like the flute's really low right in here, right? So it will kind of work, but it'll tend to get swallowed up by the violas, right? So once again, like clarinets are the instrument, like for this, right? That would cover the same thing, and then your bassoons aren't doing anything, so just have your clarinets play the bassoon part, right? Or excuse me, your bassoons play the clarinet part, I meant to say. So I would just say move this down to the bassoons, move that down to the clarinets, and then you have elements that actually contribute rather than just getting swallowed up, right? Like the flutes are really not doing, the effect here will be minimal, just the same as the way the alto flute will be minimal in support of the violas here. Okay, and then your response is almost the same thing, just like soft horns and celesta, right? And it's done at the same pitches, right? There's no variation of pitch. So I would just say, think about like whether or not changes in register, changes of color, or whatever might underline the contrast right in there. Okay, and then bum 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 bum. We already talked about this. That's going to work fine. And then you have our little resolution, right? And then you need time to get to your piccolo for the alto flute player. Okay, and then boosh. Now this contrabassoon note, like as you're hearing in the mock-up, it really is kind of a honking sound. It's sort of a very buzzy, kind of almost irritated sound. So if that's what you want there, like the mock-up isn't lying to you. I like the punctuation here on the attack of the double basses. I think that's great. And then dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. I like that dun dun dun. Right, just really thinking about the articulation of these phrases, right, rather than just dropping a big old piano style slur over it. And just little decorations. Very effective, right? You're keeping them from playing out too much and being too annoying. However, just be cautious about staying in the mezzo place, right? In mezzo hell, mezzo piano, mezzo forte, right? Just everything is just sort of kind of in a medium space, right? Everything is moderated. There's nothing with real like intimate or forceful color in here, right? It's just all just very cloudy, right? And then here we get a big push. I like that, actually committing to something. Now notice here, like celesta, like it will actually like will not be loud, right? So it's more, the loudest a cellista can play is really kind of mezzo piano compared to the rest of the orchestra, right? So, but you're doing what you can. You want it to match with the pizzicato. So I might even like score this as like, if you just want this to be punchy, I would say maybe score it as like accented eighth notes, right, with a rest after it, and then right now I'm noticing most people are not bothering to mark pedal marks for a cellista, but the cellista does have a pedal, and the pedal is part of its scoring, so it doesn't hurt to write that in, because like the note performer programmers are just going to assume that when you score something for cellista, it's going to be pedaled, right? But it won't be unless you ask for it, or maybe they'll assume just like a sort of romantic way. I mean, I've noodled around on cellista before, and I can see where I've played it, I should say, and I can see just like kind of the shorthand of assuming that everything is intended to be sort of washy and sustained. So, but I mean, it doesn't hurt to think about it, like how long is it the cellista note really intended to be? Okay, yeah. So, dun 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 dun. Contrabassoon and trombones. That's an interesting mixture. Yeah, I mean. Yeah, I guess that'll work. Yeah. Yeah, that's a combination I hadn't really considered. Okay, and yeah, okay, so a couple of kind of strange things here. All right. So I'm just jumping back. Right. All right. Okay, so sorry about the screen jumping back and forth. Okay, so like you've got this kind of scored in a kind of a 1-3-2-4 sort of configuration here, and then here you absolutely are 1-2-3-4. So just maybe if you are finalizing this, switch the middle voices, right? Because it really should be the second player playing the D sharp here, and the third player should be playing the F sharp there, written pitches, right? And you shouldn't be enclosing your first and second player with your third and fourth, right? This high note here should be played by the first player, right? And then the F sharp should be played by the third, and then the D natural is fine for the second, and the C natural is fine for the fourth. And then here, this is absolutely perfect for the third player to be playing high along with the first player. Okay, well, let me not get ahead of myself, because I've got a lot to say about this and why the balance didn't work, and possibly the reason for the changes to the mix in your in the mixing panel. All right. Da-da-da-dum, I really like the way that this just suddenly leaps up an octave, and the way you come in with the winds, and then you also make sure that it is mezzo forte pushing into the forte, right, along with the strings, and then just a little touch of horn and triangle and so on. That's really, really nice scoring right in here. Like really no objections there. Okay. Keeping in mind that high G natural here on the piccolo it is going to push at the ear of the, it is going to be a powerful sound, right? It's not without consequences scoring above E on the piccolo, right? A high E, right? It just becomes more and more of a sound that in which the overtones become stronger and stronger and push at the ear. Okay, just warning people, watch out for that. Okay, now here on the resolution, I felt this was just way too slow, right? The meno mosso, right? yeah, just like maybe just adjust this. I would say like make sure that whatever tempo is marked here it's just a little bit slower, right? And then that way you come back to the tempo primo and it isn't just a big drag. It just feels like it's really dragging back on the tempo, really pulling back. I don't think this. I see here it's like first desk divisi, and then you're just making it a really intimate sound of solo players. I guess that's okay. So we're starting to bring in more, more of that kind of more intimate sound. Okay, so here we get to like harp plus horns. Okay, now we definitely have some problems. So the reason why the horns are kind of shouting out here, and perhaps you brought them down in the mix, is just they really will, like, it doesn't matter that you're marking mezzo piano crescendo, to this high G sharp, that is really going to feel more like forte. It's hard to control notes above the staff. They just become louder and shoutier, and they just really want to project, especially if you're going all the way up to A sharp. I mean, that is like two pitches away from high C, right? So it just is gonna, like, the mock-up isn't lying to you, and especially the fact that you've chosen to have these doubled, right, on each pitch. So it is going to be a big sound, right? And to accompany this big sound, you've got like little flurries of winds right in here, and this lovely motion right in here with the bass clarinet trading off over to English horn, and celesta and harp. So the celesta and harp are just going to disappear under the mammoth projection of the horns. And I would have to say that a lot of this delicate wind scoring right in here will also be affected. You can barely hear this lovely line right in here, with from bass clarinet to cor anglais, right? So you might want to rethink this a little bit. Now this is going to be fine. Like the strings are going to work out. That's going to be all right. And this will come through to a degree. Yeah, like using the treble clef going there. Yeah, so that will come through. So, okay, so some possible fixes, all right? So I know you want to really avoid, you want to have a contrast here, winds versus strings, right? But the horns are just so huge that you almost need to have some kind of doubling in here for certain things to work. Like, both times, like if this line both times was doubled with strings, right? So string doubling with these instruments and then back and forth, right? So there was the same doubling each time in both parts. You have a chance of saving this, right? And and there's no way to mark this down and say, oh, well, okay, well, I'll have the horn started piano crescendo, right? Because still you're running into this G sharp and this A sharp to G sharp here, which will just be very big and bright, right? There's kind of no way to control that. And just the issue as well of of whether or not they will bash everything down. So I mean, I would say if you really want to save the delicacy of this beautifully calculated texture in here, you might want to choose a different melody instrument. I mean, I hate to say that because it's so cool to see these doubled octave horns in there, but realistically speaking, the celesta is non-existent there, right? And the harp just will not really have a chance, especially like written in this register here that the horns are sitting on. They will also disappear, right? You might get away with like just get rid of the harp part and just have a big rolled chord right in here. You would hear that, right? But the rest of it is just not balanced very well. Okay, so despite the fact that I really love this, I think that this is really, really great, a really great conception, except for the horns in the middle of it, right? Or the horns are a really great conception, except that the idea of contrasting these two groups and and having them both be delicate, in the face of the horns won't work, right? So I really hate to say that because like you put so much work into that and it's such a great idea. Okay, and then here, da 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 da. So you're trying to pull back here by using more or less instruments, right? And adding more or less. And then this, just the wonderful this idea right here is kind of looking forward to it's a taste of things to come, right? Yeah, and and just once again, powerful. Like the trumpets will get more powerful, but it's just the question of like how mellow do you want it to be? Maybe it's better just to have a single horn on this, like be just that one beautiful, kind of lonely, strong sound. Just brave sound right in there, as opposed to just stacking more of them. Right? It just might work better. These trombones are cool, but I would keep them behind the texture, right? Piano, crescendo to mezzo piano. Or just piano, crescendo, and then back again, and don't bother telling us what's in the middle here. And that will be a much better blend to what's happening here. The way that they're scored now, going up to mezzo forte here, the cello will be, this lovely little line you've got here in the cello is going to be disappeared, right? This is something that I feel it's a shame that you're just using all of your lower winds here except for contrabassoon, because it would be great if there was something bulking this up a little bit, right? Just bringing it out a bit more, right? But this is all just such cool scoring right in here. Okay. I'm really not getting into like whether some instruments are solo. So arco, solo, norm, right? So you would go tutti rather than norm to correct solo, right? So you use norm for string effects, right? Like if you're saying sol G or sol ponticello or something like that, then go to norm to correct that, okay? Or ordinario, ORD period. All right, so I really love the idea of speeding up at the end instead of slowing down, right? I mean, I think that's such a fun idea. Like it just suddenly like it changes the whole context, but not in a bad way, right? Just like you're adding a new twist to it to kind of, and from my perspective, it doesn't really change the meaning as much as it sends it adds something to it, right? So it kind of propels it, obviously so at a higher speed, but. All right, so violas, bum, 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 bum. That's nice. And then like this little glistening celesta falling with little staccato flute family members. And here, like, see, it doesn't matter that we're going all the way down to like D sharp in our flute and piccolo because the scoring is so incredibly soft right in here, right? And there's never going to be any competition here from the celesta. But what I would do is I would add like diminuendo right here at the end for your violas, so that they don't they're not going da 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 da. You know what I mean? Let them diminuendo out. All right, and now we're going to higher cellos. Bum, 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 bum. And yeah, this is kind of cool. Flurry of oboes. All right, and then once again, celesta. It's really doubtful that the harp will last for more than about 3 bars. And I would actually say the harp will last till about right here in terms of its sustain. But anyways, I mean, look, if you might as well just let it sit there, but like I would mark it up in maybe a little bit. I don't know, piano's all right. Piano's all right. It's fun. All right, and then more instruments, sort of skipping down with celesta. little celesta cascades. I really do like that sort of broken chord approach there. It's really nice. Okay, and then we go to second violins, Divisi strings, and this is all going to work for bassoons. You get a little bit, I guess going back and, just like, you just have to ask yourself, like, how does that sound? You know what I mean? Like, how does it sound to have the first bassoonist going, it's a little, it's kind of in a throaty, kind of slightly uncomfortable place, right? It's not necessarily the most beautiful, like, pushing things up there. It'll work, but, how lovely is that, How could, I would just tell you, like, you've got a bass clarinet. The bass clarinet could be playing these upper pitches just much, much more fluidly, right? So you could have like first or second bassoon on the lower voice, and then bass clarinet just very fluidly going back and forth between these two pitches. That would be my recommendation there. And then, just give them time to take a breath and then hit this low note there. And once again, right, you need, this all this stuff needs to be slurred unless you intend them to be individually articulated. And if that is the case, excuse me, if that is the case, I really think you should write out the first group, right? Just like really show that they're individual pitches that are not meant to be slurred. But I just think like da 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 da. That just seems a little nervous to me. And I really love the way that you trade off string groups here. First you put the melody in the violas, and then the cellos, high cellos, and then second violins, and then first violins. And, you're basically doing this all without any kind of doubling, wind and string doubling or wind and percussion doubling. There's no celesta, there's no glockenspiel or celesta playing in unison with the melody, or piccolo. Yeah, and then, once again, just like really cautious, sending the piccolo way, way high up there. It's just, it's going to pop out. Even mezzo forte, just beep, the little beep note up there is going to, I'm not going to say it's too powerful, but like mezzo forte is as soft as this could possibly ever be, that high of a note, right? But, you've got your celesta in there. It will work. It'll be all right. Just keeping in mind that the once again, the celesta will never be louder than mezzo piano compared to the rest of the orchestra, right? So you might want to bring down some of these building dynamics a little bit. Not in your melody, obviously, but just like in the accompaniment, right? Just be careful about that, because then the celesta really just becomes a kind of a bit player. All right, and then tubular bell. Look, just write out, a dotted half note tied to a dotted half note, right? As opposed to just like an LV, just trust. The same thing here with the timpani. You just write out a half note, okay? And as to all of this niente stuff in here, I'm just going to tell you, even though I know you people really love niente, and they use it a lot and so on and so forth. And despite the fact that there are lots of textures, like we're going into texturalist writing, sort of, the context is, I do not feel the context is right to use niente here, all right? Because it's, it is not music in which we are focusing on the fact that the instruments are fading into nothing. The instruments are perfectly fine of fading out without having to resort to niente. Okay, that's number one. Number two, some instruments are not capable of niente, like bassoon and contrabassoon, right? They cannot really do, and especially after like a really, really, really long hold, it's niente is, you're just really, the best that a the best that a double reed player can do is to shape the note right at the end so that it feels like it is disappearing. But that's not the same thing as niente. Niente is literally taking the note in an audible way down to nothing. That's a different trick. Now, bass clarinet can do that, but I mean, and so can flutes and the clarinets as the way that you've got them scored here, and possibly even the occasional note here on these strings. But I mean, you don't need to, right? It's like there's nothing about this where you need to do that. Pianissimo crescendo, you're going to be going back down to triple P crescendo, and then you're going to be going back down to triple P. That is all that needs to happen there. That is all that needs to be marked, right? And same thing for these players here. They're already at triple P, and they are going to be softening down to to nothing. Do not worry about it. Please just write triple P at the ends of things, and really don't use niente where it cannot be used for specific instruments like double reeds. And B, just use it where people are really going to be focusing on the fact that everything is really fading to nothing, right? That really the attention of the audience is drawn to the fact that the music is disappearing. Okay, so otherwise, just unless you're doing that, I don't feel that is despite the fact that this is beautifully, delicately fading out here, I still don't feel that we are at a place where we justify niente. All right. Okay, so that is my very long, somewhat ranty, but really, really enthusiastic evaluation of your score, Dave. And yeah, I mean, just what a great effort. I mean, there are so many more things that could be said about this. I just, I feel that it is, despite all the little things that I'm picking apart right in here, it's really a great score. It is a really good score. Okay. So, do not take anything the wrong way in terms of my critique. Just use what's useful and discard the rest. All right. And boy, do I hope that you try to get this performed. I think that would be a great idea. And the process of preparing it would also clear up a lot of things, I think, for you, and have you thinking about just in the process of part preparation. I think you would end up fixing a lot of things like missing slurs and everything else, right? Because it really is when you score something this huge, just really using so many instruments at once, even in delicate textures. There's so many things to think about, right? And to it's just really becomes loose ends just flopping around, right? Trying to herd cats, right? And as an owner of 2 cats, that I can, I know how that is. So, so thank you very much for the effort you put into this and for submitting it to this challenge. And it would be great to see you in future challenges, especially the next one that I've got planned, which is, like I mentioned before, is really going to be very, very different from this. And of course, thank you so much for supporting on Patreon. That just makes a huge difference of me being able to hopefully make the internet a more welcoming place for developing orchestrators. So I hope everybody's got some great stuff to say about Dave's score. And Dave, I hope that you have some great comments for some other people. I mean, especially Agnes. I think Agnes could really use some constructive feedback on her, her early attempt. With that, I will sign off, and I will see you in the next score. I think I'm going to be able to evaluate 5 scores, 5 dotted brev / longa scores today, too. So I will see you then.